From HanselMinutes.com, it's Hansel Minutes, a weekly discussion with web developer and technologist Scott Hanselman, hosted by Carl Franklin. This is Lawrence Ryan announcing show number 56, recorded Thursday, March 15th, 2007. Support for Hansel Minutes is provided by Telerik RAD Controls, the most comprehensive suite of components for Windows Forms and ASP.NET web applications. Online at www.telerik.com. Support is also provided by /N Software Red Carpet Subscriptions, the most comprehensive solution for adding connectivity to your .NET and ASP.NET web applications, with components for every major Internet protocol. Online at www.nsoftware.com. And by .NET Developers Journal, the world's leading .NET developer magazine. Online at www.sys-con.com. In this episode, Scott talks with Windows raconteur Raymond Chen.
Hi, this is Scott Hanselman, and this is another episode of Hansel Minutes, and I am sitting here in the actual office of the actual Raymond Chen, the author of The Old New Thing. He has just signed my copy of the book, and I can die now. Raymond, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, and I hope that that copy fetches a nice bounty on eBay.
I've already put it on eBay, actually.
That's
it's
great.
doubly listed on Craigslist. I intend to sell this for as much money as possible. I might get $2-3 over retail.
I'm impressed. That's more than I would have expected.
I appreciate that. So I'm a huge fan of your blog, and I actually I don't know if you put two and two together, but if you open up your book and you look on the first page.
Oh heavens! I should read that.
That's the praise for the old new thing on the first page. Raymond Chen is the original raconteur of Windows. I went to the thesaurus at Merriam-Webster, found out what raconteur meant, and said I thought it was actually inappropriate, but it means exactly what it is. You are the keeper of the stories,
a storyteller.
In fact, you are. And I llove the book. And when they said, "Hey, put a quote on the front," I said, "I got to be a part of that." I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us here. I know that you talked to Carl and the guys over at .NET Rocks for an hour or so, and you had Carl in stitches for the better part of an hour. But I want to get down to brass tacks here and find out some of the kind of fundamentals about what you work on. You're doing Win32 in the shell, right?
Yeah. So I've been I don't even remember when I came over to the user interface group in the shell team. So we're the people who deal with Explorer and common dialogues and that sort of thing. It's kind of hard to describe where the boundaries are to non-technical people, but you have a technical audience, so I
do have a technical audience.
It's mostly Shell 32 and Com Dialog and Com Control and
Com Control,
things that hang out in that world.
I remember the great 3D wars of the mid to late 90s when there was 15, 16 different versions of, was it Control
3D, Control 3D2, Control 3D2, 32?
And in subversions within those. Why was that such a problem?
Because if 3D is good, more 3D must be better.
Absolutely. I had a lot of trouble with that. That was DLL hell. That was the beginning of it, wasn't it?
I don't know. I was asleep for that part.
Is it really difficult to do versioning like that? I mean, you're just exporting a function table. I mean, how hard is it to keep those functions looking the same? Why do we get these big, I guess they were called GPFs back in the day. They were unhandled application exceptions, UAEs,
unrecoverable application error. That's right. Wow, that brings back horrible memories, and you have to make sure not to confuse it with the United Arab Emirates.
In fact, yes. The people in Dubai do not appreciate that in any way.
That people don't like UAEs for some reason. It's like, we're just minding our own business.
Why was versioning so hard? Why were there so many copies of that DLL?
There were so many copies of that DLL, I actually don't know because I wasn't around for that. But sure. I assume that the reason there were so many copies of that DLL was everybody thought it was really awesome. Or everybody wanted to have their own version of it because, mine is cooler than yours.
But I realized
I wrote it. It must necessarily be cooler than yours.
Yes, invented here syndrome.
Yes, exactly.
Specifically invented here. No, I realize that I'll probably ask you a few questions where you weren't here, and I know that you're known for volleying back questions that are not. I wasn't here. Sorry, I was sick that day.
I'm very good at rejecting questions,
and I appreciate that. So most of this interview will be rejected questions, but I'm more interested in.
You can listen for them on the deleted scenes.
In fact, yes, on the special features. I'm interested in versioning because you're living in a non-managed world, and I haven't lived there in a while, right? I thunked the last time I thunked was at least 10 years ago. And I appreciate the occasional...
The scars are healed.
In fact, I appreciate the occasional dereferenced pointer, and that's great that you guys do that, but is versioning really hard in an unmanaged world? I mean, you've got methods inside of Shell 32 and the different things that you maintain that probably you wish you could yank out, but you just can't for compatibility, right?
Oh, there's stuff that we want to yank out all the time, but, we publish the function, we document it, now we're stuck with it.
Now, from a static dependency analysis perspective, you can keep those functions looking the same. Things will line up. They take the right parameters. But is it really difficult to make sure that the semantics of those functions, including bugs, stays the same?
Yeah, bug for bug compatibility is one of the things that you sort of don't appreciate until you have to do it. In fact, looking at the changes between Windows XP and Vista, we see people complaining about things saying that, hey, if I pass this invalid string to path is, they're like, path is network path. It used to say it was, and now it says it isn't. And we say that's right, because it isn't. Well, I was sort of hoping it would still be one, because now it's slowing down my program.
I remember when I remember literally the day that I double-clicked on the time date thing and saw that the little time date applet, and I saw that you had removed the time zones because of that border war or whatever was it Peru or something?
There were right. The time zone one was an Ecuador-Peru border war, as I recall. And
I was sad. And I said, a feature has been removed, and I have seen it happen. I noticed. I'm sure that a lot of people didn't notice. I know that you said on Carl's talk that they removed scraps, and you removed scraps personally.
I removed scraps.
I noticed, damn it. And I didn't really notice. No, I'm kidding.
I don't think anybody's even noticed yet.
I actually notice when I make a scrap. And I go, what the hell is that?
What was that?
And
How do I get rid of this thing?
Immediately off my desktop. I even opened one up once, looked to the for the MZ header to see if it was evil.
Yeah, I suspect that most people who created scraps did it completely by mistake, and all of the support calls were questions of the form, how do I get rid of this thing?
Fantastic. Is the semantics, you said that the semantics are very difficult to maintain. I understand that there's some kind of and I may be misspeaking here, but there's some kind of a secret, evil, parallel universe inside of a Windows box that's like the application compatibility. Here, we know everything there is to know about Arthur's teacher trouble, so we'll patch up these 6 APIs.
There's a not insubstantial database of programs and all the little things that have to be done to keep them happy. And it doesn't even begin to cover all of the applications out there. The AppCompat team have a rather large library, but it's clearly not comprehensive.
So how are they doing that? I mean, they're literally saying, Arthur's teacher trouble doesn't work anymore, and it's because they're passing nonsense to, I don't know, get path info or something.
Those guys are amazing. They have to have a pretty good knowledge of large chunks of the system. When a program stops working, they're usually the ones who do the initial debugging to figure out what's going on, and then once they narrow it down, they can hand it off to a particular component team. If they determine that there's a shell functionality change that's causing trouble, then they can send it over our way. But they have a pretty tough job of having to figure out even what area the problem even lies in.
So specific to the shell, when I go properties compatibility and I see all that stuff, it seems like I'm doing that a lot now in Vista. I'm saying, no, XP Service Pack 2. What exactly is happening there? You're patching Git version?
When you pick like one of those larger categories, like if you run the I'm trying to remember what it's called, the Application Compatibility Toolkit.
Yeah, where is that? It's like appcompatwiz.exe.
It's punch it into your favorite search engine and hopefully it'll turn up. The Application Compatibility Toolkit lets you apply individual fixes, and there are hundreds upon hundreds of them, to specific applications. But if you use the compatibility page, then you're sort of It's sort of like like a combo meal where we sort of have the Windows XP combo meal. Or if you pick this, we'll apply these 25 fixes that tend to cover most of the problems applications have had. And they can range from just reporting that it's Windows XP, even though it really is Windows Vista, right, to, checking applications to see if they try to access a file by an old file name, we turn it into the new file name before sending it through.
So it's lying.
It's various degrees of sleight of hand.
So, back in the day when men were men and program manager reigned supreme, I think even on Windows 95, you came in Windows 95 kind of universe, right? Was it Chicago or was it Memphis?
It was called, what was it
Memphis?
called? It was called Cougar back then.
Oh my.
Yeah, that was actually a precursor project to what eventually became Windows 95.
Mm-hmm. And, there were, I know the icons were prettier. There were less, back in the day before Windows XP, before Windows 2000, there were fewer device contexts, fewer brushes. There was a minimal amount of stuff that you could paint. And I remember that every once in a while when my computer got really stressed out, icons would start turning black.
Ah, yes, the black icons.
Why?
Because you ran out of GDI resources. But you
had a black brush though. I mean, someone was able to, why not paint them white? Why black?
Well, but the way icons are drawn, you have your mask, and then you have, there's, if you recall, a bitmap, or an icon back in the day consisted of two bitmaps, a monochrome mask bitmap and a color bitmap, and the algorithm was to AND with the mask and then XOR with the color bitmap. And so the mask contained black pixels everywhere you wanted color to show through. So if you ran into a problem with the color part, all you got was the mask part, which all it did was set pixels to black. The job of the mask was to set pixels to black, and the job of the color part was to start coloring them in again. And so if you ran out of resources in the color in part, all you got was stuff getting set to black.
Ah, now the icons now...
It's through the magic of Boolean algebra, that whole AND thing.
Yeah.
It's really easy to make things
Didn't get
black.
that at community college. I'm going to look into this Boolean... Everyone, mark Boolean algebra. Let's all Google for that, find out what that is.
I think in the new math, it's just called true-false algebra.
Oh, so like an if statement. We're all smiling and smirking
here. If it's too judgmental, we just like to call it whenever.
Whenever. Raymond has a stand-up career on the side in his mind.
I kill in Poughkeepsie.
Absolutely. And what was it Carl said? Try the veal. Tip your waitress. A lot of people pick on Explorer. They pick on it a lot, and I'm sure you must get that. I mean,
I pick on it a lot.
Well, some people call it the exploder. Sometimes it crashes. One of the things I get frustrated with is when I always like to anthropomorphize.
Back in the old days, we also called it file damager.
Oh, that's brutal, dude. We're on Microsoft campus and we're talking like this. It's bad.
We actually, over lunch or over beer at lunch, often, as many people do, spend our time trying to come up with derogatory terms for products around the world. And it turns out there are a lot of Microsoft products that we're familiar with, so we spend a lot of time coming up with derogatory names for them. Part of it is just to desensitize ourselves so that when we hear it out in the wild, we don't feel so bad.
That's cool. So tell me why Explorer seems to lock up, particularly when it's enumerating drives. I open up the little plus, it goes off, and then suddenly, sorry, your CD, I don't know what's wrong with your CD. Your kid put a sandwich in it, and I can't show the next drive.
The sandwich in the CD, that was me, actually. I was, well, I mean, part of it is that, the shell is heavily based on COM, and specifically apartment model COM, and one of the advantages of apartment model COM is that everything happens on a single thread, and COM will make sure that your objects, and in fact you have to observe the rule that your objects are used on the thread they were created on, which makes it very easy to implement your objects. The downside of this is that it's kind of stuck to a thread. And we're kind of stuck with this design because that's what we've had since Windows 95. There are thousands upon thousands of shell extensions out there that are relying on apartment threading and pull incredibly evil tricks that break down if we ever put them on some other thread. So we're kind of stuck with putting a lot of things on the UI thread. We've been working to move things off, but in Windows Vista, in fact, in Windows XP, as I recall, at least folder enumeration was done in the background, and I believe I can't remember whether tree expansion was done in the background or not. But I definitely remember that, back in the old days when the address bar was just a drives combo box, that when you clicked that, it took time to spin up all the drives to get the icons and the volume information, because that is clearly pending upon an action. You click the button, the drop down has to drop down, and if it drops down, it's got to have stuff in it. So you're kind of stuck on that one. But
does it have to have stuff in it? Can it say, I'm working on it? For example, I know that Mark Rusunovich did a big thing on his blog recently where when he is a domain user and he's not on the domain, Explorer hangs for 11 seconds while someone tries to figure out what his real name is. So they can go and say, see users, domain, my name, Mark Russinovich, his name, / my documents. And when he's off the domain, he's not connected, he has no network connection. It hangs, realizes he's not on the network. 11 seconds later, it goes, see users, Mark R, the actual folder name. So
right, and the part of the problem with that is sort of goes back to the behavior changes and the function design up front is that somebody calls give me the name for this thing, and you have to give them an answer. You can't say, you could, but as the function was originally designed, the guy asks you, what's the name for this folder? And you give him an answer. And if you decide to add a new answer called, I don't know, it would take too long, or
call you later.
Yeah, try, this might take a while. You should do this on a background thread. Then all the people who don't know about this behavior will just start getting empty strings back.
So if the assumption is that I've got a limited number of milliseconds before I have to get this drop down back to the user, and if UI responsiveness is the number one priority, forgetting for a moment about the inconvenience of just procedure calls in general, in the sense that they have to have a well-known return type. If someone could institute if you can't get this back to me in 300 milliseconds, and just stop, bail, and I'll never talk to you again, and I'll make something up, like the default answer.
But of course, that requires you to be able to predict the future. Will this call to get username take more than 300 milliseconds?
So this is the Heisenberg uncertainty principle of drop-down lists.
No, it's more like life would be a lot easier if we had time machines.
It would.
I mean, there are plenty of things I would change.
Like what?
I don't know, because on the other hand, I might accidentally destroy myself. It's kind of
You would probably kill your own grandfather.
I
Accidentally.
I would sneeze and create this horrific epidemic or something.
So going back, thinking about time machines for a second, everyone thought, and by everyone within the context of this room, that would be me, thought that all the icons in Vista would be vectors. And and I think I thought that either someone said it, or they said they'll be scalable. And I had a flashback to Prodigy, and I said, oh, awesome, vectors? Those are great. I hear those are doing good things. So I just assumed that there would be some slider bar somewhere, and I would just gleefully slide it back and forth with my giant icons going bigger and smaller and bigger and smaller. And in fact, in Vista, the icon format's got to be quite a package.
The icon format has actually changed not too much, and I think we may have changed it too much even then. The icon format has been stable since the beginning of Windows.
Really? So I could put a 1024 by 1024 icon in an icon format?
Up until Windows Vista, when we added PNG icons, that was the first incompatible change of the icon format. Up through Windows XP, you could take those icons and whack them on a Windows 1.0 machine, and he'll be able to come up with icons.
Really? So the icon format, it's a bag o icons. You can have as many icons as you want in an icon.
Yeah, it's an icon directory, and then there's a header that describes how many images there are and what their sizes are and their color depth. And all of that has remained the same up through Windows XP and then Windows 2003. Windows Vista, we took a chance on adding a new icon format. And in fact, our first attempt was to fit it in to sort of follow how the original icon format sort of was meant to be with a header and then a pointer to bits, and have a different.
Can't you just put different bits in there?
Well, we were actually going to set because there in the bitmap info header, there's a compression type field. So we put ping in the compression type field. And it turns out that created a lot of compatibility problems.
Probably the third-party vendors' bitmap libraries looked at that info,
there were
and
some
they said,
very important, there's a very popular icon editing tools that, when faced with icons that had a compression type of ping, just exploded. And it turns out that that's not something we sort of enjoy.
So you just changed the format?
So we had to go back and rejigger the format a little, so that way the file format was, I guess the problem was that the way we originally put ping support in, it looked too much like an old-fashioned icon, and that tricked these programs into thinking that, oh, I know what this is. I know what I'm doing. And so, in fact, the solution to compatibility was, ironically, to make things slightly less compatible. And get these programs to sort of panic and back out before they got into too much trouble.
So you designed the format such that they would...
We actually designed the format so it didn't follow the intended expansion design of the icon format. It's
also in such a way that...
sad.
Well, but also in such a... It's clever, though, in the sense of... it's like the GIF format. And I don't say GIF. I don't believe that that's right.
I don't think many people even say it much anymore.
Well, I just said it.
Okay.
And I'll say it again. So the GIF format... I remember back in the day, they added notations at the end. They GIF 89A stuck a bunch of stuff where you can put notes on the end of your GIF.
Okay.
And it wasn't part of the original format or something. So basically, they figured out that if we put it here,
no one will look here.
They'll hit the null.
Okay.
Exactly. They'll hit the null and they'll go, that's cool. I would think it's so fun to make those kind of we made this backwards compatible in that no one blows up when we read it.
Because we put it in a place that most people consider to be junk anyway.
Exactly.
There's a lot of hunting for junk that goes on when you need to expand a file format especially one of these older file formats that everybody knows in quotation marks, where you would think that, we can just use this bit over here and that indicates a new format over there, but no, because everybody knows this file format.
It's hard to expand a binary format. It's kind of like, you don't know about this, but because you don't know about anything that's not in the shell, right? You refuse to answer all questions. I was going to mention Office. The Office format, they took structured storage, and they basically, in the Office format, if you make a docx file, you go to Word, type hello world, save as, foo.docx, right? It's a zip file. You can rename it .zip, open it up. There's a whole directory structure in there.
And there's stuff in there.
What a clever way to make an expandable
That's really
format.
Smart.
It is. But there's all the overhead of the zipping and the zip headers and all that kind of stuff from the point of view of something like an icon.
And then you're also stuck with, you can't add any new compression formats at this point.
Exactly. So at some point, the binary bits have to be...
You're stuck with it.
Yeah. You're not going to go and make the ARG or the RAR or
or any of those other fantastic acronyms that mean nothing to me.
Really? They don't mean anything to you? You weren't a DOS TSR guy? You didn't run Desk View back in the day? What were you doing before? You just appeared at Microsoft in 1990.
I can tell a story about Desk View.
Let's hear it.
Desk View is the sysrequest key. You have this keyboard and there's a button called sysrequest. What is that for? That's for Desk View. The purpose of sysrequest, as it was originally designed, as I understand it, was to be sort of a way to get the attention of the controlling operating system. So it was sort of like the old-fashioned idea of what we now call the secure attention sequence, the thing that only the operating system listens to.
And like Control-Delete.
Yeah. So, and as I understand it, Desk View is the only program that actually used sysrequest to mean, okay, I want to call up the Desk View menu thing, and nobody else paid sysrequest any attention at all. But there it is on your keyboard, sitting around waiting for somebody to press it, and then of course you press it and nothing happens because no program cares about it either.
Can you do something with it? I mean, I've never seen a hotkey.
You can draw a smiley face on it.
I've never seen a hotkey program say that would be great. They overload the hell out of the Windows key, but I've got a brand spanking new Lenovo laptop here with a little blue function key, and sysrequest is just there waiting for me. I thought it was like there's print screen and alt print screen. I thought it had something to do with that.
No. Print screen used to be on the asterisk key. It was back in the ancient days. This is why you always had to have a printer hooked up to your computer and ready. Because if you can go search on the internet, find pictures of those really, really old keyboards. And the right-hand shift key was not a huge key like it is today. It was the size of a normal key. And next to it, to the right, was a key that had an asterisk when unshifted and was print screen when shifted. So if you were a sloppy typist, your right pinky would reach for the shift key, it would slip too far, and it would hit the shift key and the asterisk, which meant print screen.
That's good design.
Yeah, so you would be sitting there minding your own business, typing away, and then your machine would lock up because it's waiting for your printer. No, it didn't make any noise. It
that
just
was
sat
the printer
there.
sound. Remember the old dot matrix printers, and they go.
I just remember the geek geek sound. Yeah. I don't remember all the head moving around not doing anything.
That's good design. Have you read you read The Design of Everyday Things? I'm sure you probably have that around here somewhere.
Yeah,
the teapot book.
Yes, it's a fantastic book.
That kind of I love that kind of stuff. There's such legendary designed applications that just really push the limit, like Microsoft Bob.
Oh, Bob. Yeah, Bob was a product ahead of its time. It was clearly
brilliant.
It was sort of too revolutionary for its own good.
I ran it. I sincerely tried for a week.
Genius was underappreciated and has now been supplanted by YouTube. No. But believe it or not, Bob is not dead. Everybody, if you have your Windows XP CD, there is a copy of Bob on that CD. What is a copy of Bob doing on my Microsoft Windows XP CD? So after consulting with all the translators and, all the other people who would need to have space on the CD, we noticed that, well, there was some empty space on the CD. So look, we paid for the CD. We may as well put stuff on it. And as sort of one of the sort of lame attempts at slowing down people who like to, make illegal copies, we put some, dummy files or dummy data on the CD, and setup would check that the dummy data was still there to make it so that way, if you were to make a copy of the CD, you still had to make a copy including all the dummy data. And when people are transferring files over 56K modems, an extra 30 meg of dummy data sort of slows you down. Not that slows people down much anymore. And the dummy data is Microsoft Bob. The person who had to come up with the dummy data was looking around for about, he's like, I don't remember if it was 30 meg or something. But he said, I need a corpus of dummy data. Where am I going to find some dummy data? And he could have called cryptgen random and generated 10 meg of cryptgen random data, but there's no fun in that. So instead, he went to the internal release servers, went through the archives, and found a copy of Microsoft Bob, and took all of the Microsoft Bob floppies, which comes out to, I don't know, whatever size he needed. But of course, Microsoft Bob floppies aren't very random, so he encrypted them using key by smashing his hand on the keyboard and generating keys that he will never be able to reproduce again. And out came an encrypted copy of Microsoft Bob, which has the nice property that the contents are closer to random. It's still not cryptographically random, but it was messed up enough. And that's what went into the unused spaces on the CD as ballast data. So if you go and find your copy of Windows XP that you bought in the store, and you know where to look, and I myself don't know where because I just heard this story, and if you can somehow mash your hand on the keyboard in exactly the right way, out will come a copy of Microsoft Bob.
That's fantastic.
So Microsoft Bob, one might say that Windows XP has been the most effective Microsoft Bob delivery system.
Bob is everywhere.
Bob is everywhere.
It's stories like that make the book so great. And, I've got your book, The Old New Thing, that some people are calling the new old thing.
I'm sort of learning to get used to it.
Why is it called The Old New Thing?
It's called, the title of the blog was in fact determined in about 35 seconds. Brad Abrams said, Raymond, you should start doing this blog thing. And I said, whoa, you really think so? I'm not sure. He said, yeah, just do it. And so I started filling out the paperwork to set up the blog. And one of the questions is, so what's its title? And I said, I didn't realize it needed a title. And I just made up the phrase, the old new thing, on the principle that I was going to be writing about old stuff, but stuff that at one time was new. And so the old new thing is talking about things that back in the day were the new thing. So that's sort of where the name comes from.
Well, it's huge. I know I was just sitting here, we were looking at your stats, and you're becoming more and more popular. People enjoy reading it. The book has new content, and you've revised some of the stories. It's very well organized. Even, I guess, even Joel Spolsky, Joel on Software, the pundits are noticing you. You're becoming a power broker in the blogosphere.
Yeah, I can always tell whenever Joel makes a reference to one of my stories, because all of a sudden they start showing up in, all these other data mining stuff. And like recently, he retold the story of that I shared, and it's in the book, it's on the blog, about blowing the dust out of the connector as a way to get people to double check things as sort of the catch-all description for getting people to check things that they would normally resist checking on the assumption that it would make them look stupid. You would say, is it plugged in? And of course they're going to say, well, of course it's plugged in. I'm not that stupid. And they're not going to check. And if you have a pretty good feeling that it's not plugged in. So you tell them, well, sometimes the connector gets kind of dusty. Could you get down there, unplug it, blow into the connector to get the dust out, and then plug it back in, and maybe that'll clear it up. And they'll go down there, they'll notice that it's not plugged in, or or if it was plugged into the wrong port, they'll unplug it, they blow into the connector, then they plug it back in. Now they're paying attention. Now they're going to plug it into the correct port. They come back and all works. And they think you're great, and everybody's happy and nobody loses face. There was, I remember there was another story about a different type of support call. Somebody had called in to report a geopolitical error in the maps used in Flight Simulator. And if you've been following what I've been writing, you know that maps, and we hit upon it a little earlier, maps are extremely sensitive data. And in general, if you can get away without using a map, that's often the safest bet. But if you're a flight simulator and the object of the game is to fly around the world, you kind of have to have maps. And somebody had called in to report that there was some sort of border problem on the map, and they got the report came in. It went through the normal bug report analysis thing, and the person got the response saying that, thank you for reporting the problem. We've taken a look at it, and we believe that everything is just fine, that the map is correct. This person was sort of unsatisfied with this answer, and instead of going through the normal escalation procedures, sent mail to Bill Gates. Bill reads his email, or at least enough of it gets to him that when this issue came up to Bill Gates, he went back to the flight sim team and said, I want to know what's going on here. And the flight sim team were like, oh, okay. We thought we had taken care of this, but apparently this person decided to sort of, just take their case straight to the Supreme Court. And, they went back and looked at it again and called the guy back and tried to get more information about why he thinks the map is wrong. Which map because we're using this map, and, where do you think the border should be? And at the end of the day, it turned out that, this person was basing his map information upon a map of the world shower curtain that he had in his bathroom. Said shower curtain was a couple years old and hadn't been kept up to date with the latest changes in borders in Eastern Europe. So that's
awesome.
Yeah. So,
and Bill was involved.
And this would normally not have been a problem, except you bring in Bill and everybody goes on high alert.
And he still doesn't answer my emails.
Yeah. Well, you need to stop opening them with like, hey, loser.
Oh, that's my problem.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Raymond, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day. I know that you're busy. You've got all sorts of stack dumps and stuff up on your screen here. I know you're busy solving problems, saving lives.
Yes, I put stack dumps up just to look impressive.
Just look impressive. Yeah, there's highlights and stuff with like, oh yeah, that's the offset into whatever. Yeah. Yeah, I mentioned I can read assembler with my eyes closed. But listen, the book is fantastic, and I don't just say that because the author's sitting right here. I really enjoyed it, and actually, I probably shouldn't say this, but it's a great bathroom book because it's got little short stories.
That was actually kind of the goal. It was not meant to be a book you sit down and plow through all at one go. It's meant to be a book that you sort of read as time permits.
And that's exactly what it's allowing me to do, and I really enjoy the stories. I think it's great, and I really appreciate your time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.